Okay, so some of you might be wondering if Myles Garrett is not the number one prospect in this draft class, according to me, he's number three, and Jonathan Allen is not the number two rated prospect in this entire draft class, then who is number one? Well, call me crazy, and maybe I'm going out on a big limb here, but to me, the number one prospect in this year's draft class is Solomon Thomas, the defensive end from Stanford. When I watch him on film, I've talked before about sometimes you could quantify it, sometimes you can't, but you just feel like you know it. Doesn't mean you're always right. It doesn't mean I'm right in this case either. But you feel like you watch a guy and you see what you feel like is a superstar in the making. And when I watch Solomon Thomas, that's the impression that I get. Even slightly ahead of Jonathan Allen and a little bit more than still Myles Garrett. Now, I'm sure some of you are going to think I'm crazy. Some of you are going to think that I'm overrating this dude, and that's fine. It's whatever. I could end up being ass wrong on Solomon Thomas. But man, when I watch him on film at the end of the day, I let the film do the talking. And, you know, even the combine I just used to reinforce some things and then just something to kind of get me through, um, it only validated what I saw. This dude is a stud. And if he had gotten the media attention playing at Stanford that Myles Garrett did playing at Texas A&M over the past couple of seasons, I honestly don't know how much of a debate there would be about which one of those two guys should go number one overall in this draft. That's my opinion. So what do I like so much about Solomon Thomas? Why is he my number one prospect in the 2017 NFL draft? Well, you look at him, he's got great initial quickness and burst. Not Myles Garrett level, but superior to Jonathan Allen, and more than enough to be able to get off the ball and bend the edge. Really good first and second step quickness, and what sets him apart, even from a Garrett, is his snap recognition and anticipation skills. He gets off the ball consistently first. He gets off the ball better than Myles Garrett does. He's got great strength. He's stronger than Jonathan Allen, and he plays to it. There were times that even when he got double teamed at Stanford, especially in his junior year, he was still unblockable. He consistently overpowers offensive guards in Stanford's 3-4 at the point of attack. They just can't match up with him. And when he lines up sometimes against tackles, it's pretty much the same story. I feel like his strength is evenly distributed throughout his body. He's got a strong lower body that enables him to continue to drive and get push. Every once in a while, he can get bothered a little bit by longer, taller offensive tackles, but even then, they still can have trouble with him. I feel like he's really polished as a pass rusher, frankly, more than I think he's getting credit for, especially initially in the draft process. I think teams are starting to wisen up and catch up to the fact that this dude is a hell of a pass rusher. He's got a wide array of pass rush moves, almost similar to Jonathan Allen and Myles Garrett. His footwork and his initial punch coming off the ball are great. He's got a really good ability, to bend the edge. He doesn't have elite explosiveness, but he's got enough first and second step quickness combined with leverage, combined with his pass rush moves to be able to bend that edge consistently. Really effective on stunts, really great on stop start moves to get offensive linemen, guards, and tackles off balance. He's a real asset in the running game. Again, better than Myles Garrett, not quite Jonathan Allen level, but he's not that far behind. He can anchor at the point of attack. He's a guy that holds the edge. He's a guy that can get upfield. He's great in pursuit. I mean, he's just an all-around hell of a football player. Really good at getting off of blockers, too, both in the running game and in the passing game. I mean, he works hard. He fights pretty consistently. Really good hand usage overall. Great technique. Again, very good strength, and it shows its explosive power on film that I see. He has stretches of games, and if you watch the bowl game against North Carolina, a lot of people are tuning into that game to watch Mitchell Trubisky, and it's Solomon Thomas that dominates. It's Solomon Thomas that people are talking about. Because even when they double teamed him, he was just completely unblockable. Completely unblockable. And if he was 6'5" and his arms were a little bit longer, we definitely would not be talking about any type of argument of who's the best pass rusher in this draft or who's the number one pick in this draft. It would be Solomon Thomas by a good margin. But at 6'3" with average, less than average length, it knocks him down a little bit. I think his football instincts are really, really good. And again, this is a guy who's a redshirt sophomore, so only played 26 games at Stanford. But again, I talked about with Jonathan Allen in particular, how special I thought his instincts of football awareness were. Solomon Thomas's football IQ is not to that level, but it is really, really good. I think his effort is great. It's better than definitely Myles Garrett and even Jonathan Allen. I always felt like you watched him and he played hard consistently, both trying to get to the quarterback and trying to stop the run. And sometimes you'll see a clear departure there. And I especially reference that with Garrett. It's the fact that his effort as a pass rusher seems to be what he loves to do is outstanding. His effort sometimes, in particular in pursuit in the running game, is pathetic. You don't have to worry about that with Solomon Thomas. Every single snap, he plays from snap to whistle, sometimes after. I mean, he always fights. He always keeps coming. Um, just outstanding. And again, played every game the past 2 years. You're talking about a guy that just got better and better, and you could count on him to be there and contribute week in and week out. There just are not a lot of flaws and not a lot of holes in his game. And when I look at his overall physical package and his upside, I think this talk about him being a tweener is fucking stupid, frankly. Myles Garrett, 6'5", 270 pounds. Solomon Thomas is 6'3", 275. Why is everybody so cocksure that Myles Garrett is a 4'3" base end and Solomon Thomas, we're not quite sure what position he plays at the NFL? I think that's insane. I think he's athletic enough and strong enough to be a 4'3" base end, a 4'3" right end. I think he's big enough and strong enough, especially to put a little weight on, to be perhaps a force as a 3-4 defensive end, and athletic enough where you could consider playing him some at a 3-4 outside linebacker in certain packages. And if you bulked him up a little bit and you play a 4-3, he could be that kind of 3 technique, one gap penetrator as a defensive tackle. He's got all types of positions. To me, sometimes you can talk about a tweener because you're not sure of what position that they play. For me, I will reference it to being versatility because he can line up multiple positions and I think dominate at the NFL level. My comparison for him is J.J. Watt. Now, granted, you're talking about a dude when healthy, he's the best defensive player in the National Football League, and you don't get a ton of argument for that. But I look at Solomon Thomas, and granted, mind you, that J.J. Watt was only the 11th pick in the 2011 draft. Just think about the fact that you had both Jake Locker and Blaine Gabbert selected ahead of J.J. Watt. If people knew what truly J.J. Watt was going to become, he would have been the number 1 overall pick in that draft class, even over Cam Newton. He's that special. He's the type of guy, if he never played another football game, he probably still gets into the Hall of Fame someday, as long as he met the minimum time served eligibility requirements. I think Solomon Thomas flashes some of what I see a lot of what I see, frankly, out of J.J. Watt at the NFL level on a Stanford film. This is a dude that can be completely unblockable even when he's double teamed, a guy that brings it every single time, a guy that has enough explosiveness, plays with tremendous power, and has explosive power in a combination that is just outstanding. I love the Solomon Thomas kid. I think he's the real deal, and I think he's special. And even when you look at the draft, at the end of the day, I will still advocate for the Browns selecting Myles Garrett because I think based off of their position and their situation, that has to be the pick for them. But who should be the number 1 overall pick in this draft to me is Solomon Thomas. Where does he go in this draft? He goes somewhere between 2 and 4. San Francisco might want him, even though they spent their last 2 first-round picks on defensive linemen in Armstead and DeForest Buckner, respectively. At the end of the day, Solomon Thomas's upside and potential and talent, especially as an edge rusher, are too good to pass up on. The Chicago Bears could definitely entertain the thought of him at number 3, and if they took him, I would be doing backflips as well, obviously, because with the 3rd pick, to me, they got the best player in the draft. Especially if you bulk him up a little bit, I think he could be a monster as a 3-4 defensive end, hence part of the comparison to J.J. Watt. You'll see some comparisons to Aaron Donald for him. And if you bulked him up to 290, 295, and you wanted to play him inside, I think he has some Aaron Donald potential. And frankly, plays even harder. If not, Jacksonville at number 4. For a team that has quite a number of young pieces on that defense, it's a Solomon Thomas that could help get that defense to another level, to where they're supposed to be and where they should be. That's as far as he should drop in this draft. If he drops much further than that, then teams don't know what the hell they're doing. That's just my opinion. I think his absolute floor in terms of his draft position is 8 at Carolina, where Carolina's picking either they take him or somebody else would trade up at that point in time to go get him. Somewhere between 2 and 8 is where Solomon Thomas is going to go. And when they get him, I think they're getting a hell of a football player and a guy who, when all is said and done, could very well end up being the best player in this draft class. Just at least the way I see it. The dude's a stud. Don't sleep on him.